Good morning.
Morning.
How are you?
Doing well. That's
So
early.
we're here to talk to our students, right, about poetry.
Yep.
Yeah, because we're about to ask them to do some pretty heavy academic work with poems, but we need to remind them about some other things as well, right?
Right.
Right. So and and we've talked about this so many times in so many different ways, and I think that this video could end up going on like really long time if we get too much into it.
That's what I'm worried about. That's my single word answers.
So what are some main things that we want to be sure we communicate to them today?
I think for me, I think personal stories really help kind of chip away at the confusion and the uncertainty of how to approach texts. And I think we read a lot of stories, and so it's just kind of like second nature, but I don't know how often we read plays or poems on our own. For some reason that for many seems like a different experience. And so I think for me with poetry, it is the constant reminder that you want to start with your heart first, and not within the first line or two of the poem start digging into it of what does this mean? I don't understand. I think that by starting with the heart, that you stay open to the entire experience of the poem. Mm-hmm. And then after that, after you've read the entire idea that the poet is exploring, then to start kind of oh, okay, what's going on?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's
and I would say also being comfortable with not knowing things in the poem, right? I think that sometimes because we're a class and we give grades, right, there's this understanding students might have this myth in their mind that somehow if we hand them a poem, they're supposed to 100% get it by the end. Like it's a puzzle that they're supposed to solve, and they're supposed to solve it in its entirety. But in fact, their poems are meant to be ambiguous and interpreted. And our goal is really that just kids come out with something, right? And there should be some mystery left in the poem.
Right.
And I think it was great. We were talking recently about how we actually totally accept that when it comes to music, right? In that poems are musical. They are based in sound, right? And image and ambiguity, a lot like music. And in the same way that when we first hear a song, we're hooked by the sound of it, right? And the beat and all of these other pieces. And it isn't until we've listened to the song several times that we probably tune into what it's even saying.
Never.
Right. And I think we should read poems the same way.
Right.
We should read it first and hear it and feel it, feel the emotion, you know. And just like with songs, we get a sense of the emotion. We get we hear the sound, but we don't necessarily think about what it's saying at first. And I think poems we need to approach them the same way.
Yeah, you used a word that I love. And the first time I directly taught in a classroom the term ambiguous, I realized that my students were starting to use it as a negative. Oh, this poet's ambiguous. And they're like, I know. And I'm like, wait a minute. No. Yeah, when we say that something has ambiguity or it's ambiguous, it's it's vague and it's confusing. And it's no, actually that's just the very nature of storytelling, that chapter 1, we don't know the ending of the story, but we're not angry about it. And we don't think that it's a weakness of the author to not tell us the entire story in one chapter. If you want that, then, then we're talking a short story or flash fiction. But for the most part, we have endless room to let the author develop and roll out their story as they see fit. But we don't always have that same kind of patience for the ambiguity or the openness of what the poem or the story could actually mean to different people. And in my opinion, ambiguity is a strength.
Yeah.
It is what makes stories lasting and enduring, because as people and humanity change and their needs change, the story also. It's sort of like no person reads the same story twice. And it's like every time you approach an idea or a story, you are a different person. And so then it continues to reveal ideas and meanings to you.
Yeah, no, I agree. All great things, you know, all the great things we love about story are based in the fact that there's some mystery there, right?
Yeah.
There's some room for interpretation. I love that.
Yeah.
And so I also know that we wanted to share a poem and read it and talk a little bit. And so I did pick a poem for us to share and read and talk about. We both taught this poem. We both know this poet. But I'll tell a quick personal story in that I first came across this poet in college, and I read the entire collected poems. The poet is W.H. Auden while sitting in my college library. But what I love about this poet is this is a poet that I didn't encounter at first in an academic way. So I allowed myself to do what we're asking you to do, which is just to read the poems at first and hear them. And I didn't understand a good chunk of the poems really in any kind of like puzzled it out, like could definitely write a paper on this. You know, at the end, I could maybe write a paper on 2 or 3 of the poems. But I had experienced them in the way that I would an album that I was listening to, and I loved them, and there were lines that are, you know, forever carved in my heart because of that. So, and I think we also want to use this as a way to talk about how to read poetry so that you can do that, right? So the actual mechanics of things like being sure to keep reading at the end of a line if there's no end punctuation, right? And looking at punctuation in poems for when to pause instead of just a line break, because a line break, you keep going, things like that. So we'll pull up a poem. There we go. Ooh, well, there it is. Oh, I had it on my, I should have opened it on my desktop. Hold on just one sec here, guys.
No worries.
I had $1 for every time I'm trying to share a screen this year, and I don't quite have it in the place it needs to be. There it is. Got it. Okay. So the poem is called As I Walked Out One Evening by W.H. Auden. There we go. And can I make this bigger?
I was just going to say, thank you so much for thinking that. Did we lose me?
Well, it closed. Okay. Oh, that's right. I forgot. My Adobe Acrobat is crashing right now, but I can save
you
this.
were just talking about that. Okay.
Yeah, I can save this though. We can just, I'll just share my desktop and we'll look at the web version.
Oh, okay.
Because I have it open in Chrome as well. Or I did. And that apparently went away too. But I can Google it. Oh. There we go.
Ooh, we can listen to it.
Yeah, that's a great reading of it, actually.
I love that when
I
find reading.
All right. Here we go. Poets.org is a great website that we're going to give you guys to use as you're picking your poets for this activity that we're getting started on. Can you see it pretty good now?
I can. Yeah, I'm all right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm going to read it. And so, again, notice even in the first stanza how, you know, you got 2 commas and a period. So this is a short pause. This is an end stop. But you really are just going to keep reading past the line unless there's a punctuation. And that really changes your experience of the poem. And I may not read the whole thing, but I'll read at least the first few stanzas. As I walked out one evening, walking down Bristol Street, the crowds upon the pavement were fields of harvest wheat. And down by the brimming river, I heard a lover sing under an arc of the railway. Love has no ending. I'll love you, dear, I'll love you till China and Africa meet, and the river jumps over the mountain and the salmon sing in the street. I'll love you till the ocean is folded and hung up to dry, and the 7 stars go squawking like geese about the sky. The years shall run like rabbits, for in my arms I hold the flower of the ages and the first love of the world. But all the clocks in the city began to whir and chime. Oh, let not time deceive you. You cannot conquer time. In the burrows of the nightmare where justice naked is, time watches from the shadow and coughs when you would kiss. In headaches and in worry, vaguely life leaks away, and time will have his fancy tomorrow or today. Into many a green valley drifts the appalling snow. Time breaks and the threaded dances and the diver's brilliant bow. Oh, plunge your hands in the water, plunge them up to the wrist. Stare, stare in the basin and wonder what you've missed. And I'll stop there. I wanted to keep going. I actually kept going much longer than I wanted to because I love that poem.
This is a beautiful way to start the morning.
It is.
Like, I just walked with greatness. Thank you, Claudine. Yeah. I can't help but like explore and experience those words as you read them, you know? And if you were to ask me like, okay, so what is it about? Like, I don't know right now. I mean, I've got some ideas, but my ideas are more like phrases.
Mm-hmm. Like time, like something about time.
Yeah, right. Time was capitalized. I mean, I noticed that. So I'm like, there's a phrase that you said before you started that I think like really captures how I like approach poetry, and it's like lines carved in my heart. And I love that phrase because that's what I'm always looking for. And I think Auden is such a great example of being able to find lines like within a poem that maybe you're not even sure about. There will be such beautiful turns of phrases that really capture and hold my breath of like, even like I'm not totally sure what it all means, but I love it.
Yeah, and I think that really I think gets it. Our real purpose here, why we're making this video for our students, is that we recognize that in class sometimes we hinder that experience by asking them to analyze, right? And so this is our way of saying, hey, no, we actually want you to read it first and hear the words and underline the phrases, being comfortable that you may not actually know what the heck, right? And that's okay. But you're just, and you're noticing how you feel, like what emotion does it maybe evoke for you? But in fact, it's really hard to feel that emotion or have that experience that you're supposed to have with poems if you're too worried about understanding it at first.
You're right.
Right.
A saying that I have on my wall that I bring forward onto the board as we do poetry or novels and that sort of thing is that good literature raises more questions than it answers. And so as you read it, we're reading experts in their field and in their genre. And so when we get done with a poem, you bet you're going to have more questions than answers. There will be other poems or songs that you come across that you'll get right away. And that doesn't mean that they're not good, but it's like we're talking about ideas and words that last and transcend generations. Mm-hmm. And so with that, we're going to end up with a little at the beginning as opposed to getting it all.
Right, which is why the first part of this activity, we do ask that you read through the poems you selected for your poet and allow yourself to first just listen and have an experience. And there's a space for you to do that. And then, the next step is to go in and try to see, well, what can I find that I might have something to say about in these poems? And you're just looking for where you have something to say and not worrying about where you're not sure, right? Just accepting that's going to be a fact.
Right. And being able to let go, like the parts that you're not sure about yet. Of like, I really liked this part up here. This was a beautiful turn in phrase. This imagery was just outstanding. And I'm getting the feeling or the emotion of, and then just wait for it to kind of keep, I don't know, gurgling on the back burner or whatever. And, and some poems you'll end up feeling more comfortable with than others.
Yeah,
Just
absolutely.
like with books.
Yes.
The same, or movies, right? I always tell people I had to watch The Matrix like, I don't know, 5 times because I love it, but I don't know what I'm, or Inception, or those like, and you're just like, I need to replay that one. It's the same thing.
Awesome.
Same as homes.
Well,
Okay.
we should probably stop this recording and
I can keep
just
talking.
say, hey,
No.
we are, I could keep going. I could totally keep going.
I know, right?
We're
You're restraining
yay
yourself
poetry.
so well.
We are awesome.
Right.